This is the main news of Korea today. The Board of Audit and Inspection has decided to audit the Moon Jae-in government's nuclear power plant project, as well as the supply and management of vaccines and masks after the outbreak of COVID-19. The Board of Audit and Inspection announced that it has finalized its audit operation plan for the second half of 2022 at an audit committee meeting held on the 23rd. Moon Jae-in, while the government focused on new and renewable energy, including solar power, it will understand the situation in relation to the criticism that nuclear power has caused an imbalance in energy supply and demand. The Board of Audit and Inspection said in March last year that there were no procedural problems in the process of establishing energy policies for nuclear power plants, drawing keen attention to future results. With COVID-19 related audits, the Board of Audit and Inspection also conducts an audit of the government's response to infectious diseases. The audit of the Board of Audit and Inspections analyze the infectious disease response system is to check the Moon Jae-in government's financial support for vulnerable groups and medical institutions, and the supply and management of medical and quarantine products such as vaccines. In December 2020, former President Moon Jae-in announced that he would directly secure a large amount of vaccines and supply them at an early stage, but there was controversy because the vaccine did not come in properly at the promised time. In addition, the Board of Audit and Inspection will also audit the high-ranking government officials' Crime Investigation Office and the National Election Commission, which announced its audit policy within this year. As a result, major power agencies such as the Supreme Prosecutor's Office, the National Intelligence Service, the National Election Commission, and the Airborne Agency will be inspected in the second half of the year. The improvement of administration and practices of the National Tax Department to secure financial efficiency and soundness was also included in the audit. The Board of Audit and Inspection has decided to carry out an audit of expenditure restructuring and a national statistical system that checks the overall waste and leakage of fiscal expenditures as planned. It also investigates the financial and management status of major public institutions and contribution and investment institutions. The Board of Audit and Inspection said, recently, inflation has raised concerns over slowing economic growth and caused inconvenience to the public, adding, if unnecessary regulations are maintained due to public officials' passive administration and complacency, we will thoroughly check and deal with them strictly according to the principle of zero tolerance. A contract for domestic research and development of the Marine Corps landing attack helicopter is expected to be signed as early as next month. According to the government on the 25th, the Defense Acquisition Program Administration will sign a contract with KAI of the Korean Aerospace Industries to develop a system for the Marine Corps landing attack helicopter as early as next month. Earlier in April last year, the Defense Acquisition Program Promotion Committee decided to promote the land attack helicopter project as a domestic research and development. As a result, a total of 24 landing attack helicopters will be created, which have been upgraded and developed armed with the existing landing maneuver helicopter Marinion developed by KAI. The introduction of landing attack helicopters is expected to reinforce the landing force's ability to support air firepower and strengthen their ability to prepare for enemy raids on Northwest Islands. About 1.6 trillion won will be invested in the project from 2022 to 2031. In the meantime, it was controversial earlier whether the landing attack helicopter, which upgrades and develops Marinion into an armed type, could meet the operational composition of the Korean military. Landing attack helicopters need strong firepower and strong armor capability, and they are asking if they will be able to improve Marinion. In response, the Marine Corps insisted on importing Bell's attack helicopter Vipers. Since then, as opinions have been divided over whether it is domestic or foreign imports in previous studies, the agency has decided on domestic development based on the results of business analysis research services entrusted to external private companies. It is heard that KAI intends to eliminate concerns by supplementing its capabilities for gloves. An official from the agency said, once the development of the landing attack helicopter is completed, it will undergo a test evaluation. At that time, if the Korean military does not meet the composition of operational requirements, it cannot be mass-produced, he said. There are ways to supplement some concerns. Some netizens, including some figures from the former administration, claim that the fashion magazine Vogue Korea took a fashion pictorial at the Blue House as a national disgrace, but it is not easy to understand no matter how much you think about it. Fashion is a field of art. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, which is said to be the best art museum in the United States, has 35,000 costumes and accessories. The name of the Anna Wintour Costume Center, which houses the work at the museum, is exactly after the famous editor of Vogue, Anna Wintour. The Louvre Museum, France's best museum, also has a separate clothing art museum. It is hard to understand why taking photos in the fashion field, which has already become firmly established as a field of art and cultural assets, is damaging the national reputation. Vogue has been shooting fashion magazines at the White House for decades. When I searched the internet, I saw a black and white photo modeled by an assistant of a White House nurse under President Franklin Roosevelt in 1943. There is also a picture of Michelle Obama, the wife of President Barack Obama, wearing a white dress and among the white pillars of the White House. Photographs of Eisenhower, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, Clinton, Bush, and Biden's wives can also be seen. If there is a difference in the fashion pictorial of the Blue House, most of the photos taken by the president's wife are models. On the other hand, the Blue House pictorial featured a famous domestic model. Does that mean that the fact that a general model, not the president's wife, took a photo shoot is a violation of national prestige? It's beyond my comprehension. Some netizens took issue with the model's lying down posture at the Blue House guest house, which is even more difficult to understand. If you look at the picture, the model connects several chairs and then lies at an angle on them. The face is staring straight ahead. It is a posture that is commonly seen in photo shoots. If this stance is also a problem, it excessively violates freedom of expression. Since it was the seat of the guest house, I would like to ask again, is it the Joseon dynasty now? If it means to take a photo only in a rather calm posture, it is all the more problematic if there is a latent sense of citizenship and class consciousness at the root of the claim that it is damaging the national character. If Cheongwa Day reflects the hierarchical idea that it is a place where the president, the head of state, worked, and a fashion model dare to come and take pictures, it may be proof that the old authoritarian culture still suppresses Korean society. Vogue is the world's best fashion magazine, and the model that took photos at Cheongwa Day is the best model in Korea. They are people who have risen to their positions with as much effort and passion as anyone else. The fact that they are talking about the controversy over national prestige for filming a fashion pictorial at Cheongwa Day is only an act of insulting countless people who have reached the top of their respective fields. I can only hope that the perception that the person with political power is a high-ranking person will be discarded. The reaction of the Cultural Heritage Administration is rather worrisome. As the fashion pictorial became controversial, he said, we will strictly apply the standards for permission to shoot and use places at Cheongwa Day and carefully review them to strengthen the history and symbolism of the open Blue House. As Cheongwa Day said it would strengthen its historical character, I am worried that its role will be reduced to a record or activity exhibition hall of former presidents in the future. That should not be the case. The Cultural Heritage Administration can only hope to break the old and even perception with events and exhibitions that are far more provocative than fashion pictorials. Political circles are also arguing over the fashion pictorial shoot at the Blue House. Tak Hyun-min, former presidential secretary for protocol, appeared on the radio on the 24th and said, I explained that it was taken to promote hanbok, and there are many other clothes and even works by Ryunosuke Okazaki, the representative designer of Japan's avant-garde. Recently, Vogue Korea released a pictorial titled Blue House in Fashion. The background of the pictorial, in which models Han Hae-jin, Kim Won-kyung, Kim Sung-hee, Oh Sung-hwa, and Lee Aeri participated, was the main building of the Blue House, Young Bin-gwan, Sang Chun-jae and Nok Ji-won. Models showed off their unconventional poses in various hanboks and dresses throughout the Blue House. Former Secretary Tak said, Han Hae-jin has done nothing wrong, adding, the problem is that the government's inexperience harms the reputation of artists and art groups. If the Cultural Heritage Administration has become a management entity, it needs to be managed according to cultural properties, he said. If you want to use cultural properties as an event space, you have to examine them, but you use them arbitrarily. On Facebook, Tak also likened the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's opening of Cheongwa Day to Japan's opening of Changgyeonggung Palace as Changgyeongwon, saying, it is a problem in the history of Korea's presidential history, the authority of the president and the country, and diplomatic events. It's self-sufficiency, but what's really upsetting is that the self-sufficiency is transferred to the national prestige of the Republic of Korea and the shame of many people. Rep. Kim Byung-wook of the People's Power refuted Tak's opinion head-on. The opening of Cheongwa Day is President Yoon Suk-yeol's historic decision and irreversible reform to end the imperial president of the former Yongung Palace, he said on Facebook. Nevertheless, he wrote, I feel sorry for the twisted mind of former Secretary Tak, who is holding a picture while saying downgrade of Changgyeonggung Palace. Rep. Kim said, is the Korean people living in the dynastic era now? To Tak, was Cheongwa Day the royal palace that he visited during the Moon Jae-in dynasty? Does Cheongwa Day become anything sacred from the beginning? Cheongwa Day's promises that previous presidents, including former President Moon Jae-in, have not kept are open to the Blue House, saying, it is high quality when high-class officials such as the king and former Secretary Tak stay, and now that many people and sometimes models are struggling. Blenheim Palace, famous for the birthplace of former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, was selected as a World Heritage Site in 1987 in recognition of its historical and architectural value by UNESCO. It was the site of the first Dior collection in England in 1954, and in 2016, Dior opened the collection at the Blenheim Palace. In addition, in 2012, a Chanel fashion show was held at Versailles Palace in Paris, France, he said. The Blue House, which was open to the public, is not a forbidden sanctuary. The concept of the pictorial may have been disappointing, but it's a little bit of dignity because I did some fashion pictorial shoots, he said. Kim Ki-hyun, a lawmaker of the People's Power, said on the 25th, the petition of former Representative Lee Jun-sok of the People's Power is not leaked, but released through public procedures. Rep. Kim went on to point out, I have no interest in whether it was leaked or disclosed, but added, the only thing I want to say is that gossip that contains false facts that are close to defamation behind the scenes is not desirable. Lee immediately protested the remarks. Referring to Kim's interview on his Facebook page, former Representative Lee countered, the problem is that the debtor, the power of the people, and Ju Ho-young, chairman of the emergency committee, go toward what's wrong with leaking it, adding, it is unprecedented to leak the other party's petition to the media. On the same day, Rep. Kim reiterated that the timing of the national convention should be advanced as much as possible. Lawmaker Kim said, according to a recent poll, 42.7% answered that the timing of the People's Power National Convention should be held within a month to 2 months for prompt stability, and 24.0% answered the end of the year after the regular National Assembly. He added, if we add up the period until the end of the year, we can see that 66.6% of the people recognize that it is undesirable for the ruling party to operate abnormally early in the presidential term. Asked about the timing of the party convention at the new Future Innovation 24 meeting, Kim said, I just said that I don't remember what message was delivered at the Presidential Transition Committee where Ahn Jae-ol-soo participated, adding, if we disagree, it's a dispute or a unanimous decision. Former party leader Lee Jun-sok was a time bomb, said Shin Pye-yong, a lawyer known as President Yoon's mentor, adding, it will soon be thrown out into a shabby shape. Lawyer Shin said on his Facebook page on the 25th, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration is very unlucky. Lawyer Shin said, the Democratic Party of Korea is the absolute leader in the National Assembly, and the world's economy is in a gloomy shape due to the Ukraine war, adding, many public institutions' heads, which the Moon Jae-in government has kept in mind, refuse to resign to watch the sinking of the Yoon Suk-yeol government. This has made it almost impossible for the entire administration to move people below the vice-ministerial level. He also said, the Moon Jae-in government's determination to take control of the media is still strong, and public broadcasting is loyal to that side. Lawyer Shin said, in addition to this, the Lee Jun-sok incident broke out, adding, Lee Jun-sok was a time bomb. It was going to explode one day. So, it may be fortunate that it broke out in the early days of his inauguration, but the impact is also significant. Before Lee Jun-sok held a press conference at the National Assembly, he predicted that he would declare an all-out war against President Yoon in the future and start an extreme struggle, he said. My prediction was vividly correct again. Unless he tries to collect the frame that his bad luck was solely due to political persecution, he will continue to fight. In particular, he said, I don't think he will change his attitude shamelessly even if the charges of 3 criminal sets, sexual favors, destruction of evidence and false accusations against Lee Jun-sok go through a trial process following prosecution. Lawyer Shin said, the public is always enthusiastic about good and bad, and added, some people defend that Lee Jun-sok is acting like a young man. However, he is now nearly 40 years old, and he has been in politics for more than 10 years. The evil words spewing from his mouth are by no means young and not by mistake. He said, it's reasonable to think that it gets worse as I get older because he is that young. He then predicted, when Lee Jun-sok is thrown around in a shabby shape in the near future, the people will probably think of good and bad in their heads. On the 25th, President Yoon Suk-yeol, who is continuing his on-site activities for people's livelihood, visited a traditional market located in Gangdong-gu, Seoul, and held a Yucha Emergency Economic People's Livelihood Conference. At the meeting, President Yoon announced policy directions to reproliferation of COVID-19 and to fully recover small business owners and self-employed people affected by high prices and heavy rains, strengthen their competitiveness, and make a leap forward. President Yoon, who visited Amsa General Market earlier in the day, greeted merchants by looking around stores in the market before the meeting. He expressed interest by looking at contents such as online shopping, a live commerce, and the formation of an online merchant association, a site for converting online and digital platforms promoted by traditional markets. After touring the traditional market, representatives of small business owners and private experts, including the chairman of the Korea Federation of Small Businesses, the chairman of the Korea Federation of Merchants, and the merchant chairman of Amsa General Market, attended the meeting. President Yoon said, we would like to discuss the policy direction for small business owners and self-employed people who are at the bottom of our economy, adding, small business owners and self-employed people are in trouble due to reduced sales and increased debt due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Taking strong care of their lives is the reason for the existence of the state and the government. President Yoon said, since taking office, we have established and implemented a 100-day roadmap for COVID-19 emergency response. Immediately after the launch of the government, 25 trillion won in loss compensation has been paid through an extra budget, special subsidies, loan support, and customized debt adjustment programs, he said. However, it is still not easy due to inflation, COVID-19 reproliferation, and recent floods. In the short term, we will help debt adjustment and rapid recovery through an emergency response plan, and create conditions to be reborn as a competitive entrepreneur in the mid to long term, President Yoon said. If our small business owners also have entrepreneurship and operate with the idea that the store is not just a business, the government will also support these small business owners to foster stores, he promised. In order to grow local alley commercial districts as local attractions centered on creative small business owners, local commercial districts and local brands that can be branded must be developed, he said. The government will support the establishment of local brands and prepare various conditions and systems for commercial development projects. In addition, President Yoon reiterated, many merchants across the country are suffering from floods, and we should mobilize all resources from the country to take care of the restoration of facilities and necessary support. In order to ease the burden of high interest rates, it has also prepared a plan to steadily supply new and loan-to-deposit loans worth about 58 trillion won and focus on nationwide consumption festivals more than 5 times a year to lead to a rise in sales of small businesses. It also announced that it will supply 70,000 smart stores, smart workshops, and smart markets that improve the digital infrastructure of small business owners and traditional market stores over 5 years, and train 100,000 e-commerce small business owners every year by 2027. A suspected patient occurred 2 weeks after announcing the end of COVID-19 in North Korea. Following the blockade of the area, the North Korean authorities have started to investigate the cause of the disease, including inspection and analysis. Citing the National Emergency Defense Command, the Korean Central News Agency reported on the 25th that 4 suspected malignant infectious diseases occurred in Yangang province on the 23rd. The North Korean authorities are expressing COVID-19 as a malignant epidemic. The news agency said that the Quarantine Command and the Emergency Quarantine Unit immediately blocked the area where fever occurred, and mobilized a rapid maneuvering quarantine and rapid diagnostic treatment group to determine the origin of suspected patients through nucleic acid tests and genetic sequencing. The Quarantine Command then noted that the fever victims had never been infected with malignant infectious diseases, and said that they had banned movement in the area until the results of the investigation into the cause of the outbreak were confirmed. In addition, he added that he dispatched epidemiological experts, virus experts, and test experts, and took measures to find people who visited the area and conduct medical monitoring. The occurrence of suspected COVID-19 patients in North Korea came about 2 weeks after holding a national emergency quarantine summary meeting in Pyongyang on the 10th and officially declaring that they won the quarantine war. It will be difficult to even propose a partial amendment to the National High-Tech Strategic Industry Competitiveness Act, which was proposed by the Special Committee to strengthen the competitiveness of the semiconductor industry, to the National Assembly this year. In order to review and pass the bill, it is necessary to go through the process of introducing it to the Standing Committee after the proposal, because the period of consideration is short. As the core is the content including the country's authority to create semiconductor clusters, the later the bill is submitted, the more inevitable it will be to come up with follow-up policies to strengthen semiconductors. It is unclear whether the revision of the Act on Special Measures for Strengthening and Protecting the Competitiveness of the National Advanced Strategic Industry, which was proposed by the Special Committee on Power Semiconductors on the 25th, will be presented to the plenary session of the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency scheduled for the 1st of next month. This is because the National Assembly has set the Maginot Line for the bill to be reviewed at the regular National Assembly in September as a bill proposed by July 15. An official from the Commerce, Industry and Energy Commission explained, "We determine the timing of the proposal in consideration of the deliberation period of the bill." A revision to the Act on Special Measures for Strengthening and Protecting the Competitiveness of the National Advanced Strategic Industry, which includes the authority to create specialized complex, a key clause of the bill, was proposed on the 4th and excluded from the list of bills to be deliberated at the regular National Assembly. The core of the revision of the Special Act on Semiconductors is that the state has the right to create specialized complexes. Currently, the National Advanced Strategy and Industry Committee has the authority to designate and release specialized complexes, which means that it will add the right to create them. Earlier, SK Hynix decided to spend 120 trillion won to build 4 factories in Yongin Semiconductor Cluster, but it reflects the voices of the site that the launch is being delayed due to conflicts with Yeoju City over industrial water issues in the final stage. In addition, the bill also includes reducing the licensing deadline of up to 2 months to 1 month, expanding the scope of exemption from preliminary feasibility studies, expanding the number of universities in high-tech fields, and easing qualifications for appointment. Members of the Public's Power Committee are in a position to apply exceptions to the revision of the Special Act on Semiconductors. An official of the People's Power said, "The semiconductor-related bill should not be considered as an object of political strife, but as a level of cooperation," adding, "It should be passed even by fast track." However, the Democratic Party of Korea is cautious, saying, "We have to wait and see the discussion between the chairman of the committee and the secretary of the two parties." Yang Hyang-jae, chairman of the Special Committee on Power Semiconductors, said in a telephone interview, "One practical step in the semiconductor industry can be forever removed from the chip alliance if the opportunity is missed," adding, "The revision must be passed to prevent the semiconductor cluster business from being stranded at the last minute due to industrial water or power transmission towers." The ruling and opposition party officials are expected to meet early next week to finalize the proposal. The Commerce, Industry, and Energy Committee plans to introduce the bill at a plenary session on September 1, when the regular National Assembly will be held, and then hold a subcommittee on the bill. With the so-called Haight Career incident in which truck drivers went on strike demanding higher transportation fees, it has been argued that politicians such as the Democratic Party of Korea are prolonging the situation rather than mediating to end the strike. It strongly presses the business side to accept the union's claim and encourages the union to fight. According to labor and political circles on the 25th, Jang Chol-min of the Democratic Party of Korea visited the management with union members of the Korea Cargo Workers Union who are illegally occupying on the rooftop of Haight Jinro in Gangnam-gu, Seoul, on the 23rd. A labor official said, "I understand that the Democratic Party of Korea said that it would pressure companies beyond the level of making the issue a political issue by asking Haight Jinro to attend the parliamentary audit as a witness," adding, "the union said." Another official said, "The management told the union to accept all of the union's demands, and on the contrary, the union said it would do its best to reflect the union's position as it is largely responsible for the current situation." In response, lawmaker Jang said, "I have never brought up a parliamentary audit or encouraged the union to strike," adding, "If it drags on due to damages, it will be too natural for the issue to be transferred to the National Assembly, and the operator needs to make such a decision within this week. The members on the rooftop are very tired, so I think there will be an accident," he said. Rep. Park was not able to make a phone call. The Yulgiro Committee of the Democratic Party of Korea will visit the strike site later in the day, including Woo Won-sik. Members of the Korea Confederation of Trade Unions Korea Cargo Solidarity Headquarters have been staging a sit-in protest at the headquarters in Haight Jinro, Gangnam-gu, Seoul, demanding higher fares, reinstatement of fired members, and cancellation of damages. Last year, household assets accounted for the highest proportion of non-financial assets, including real estate. It is analyzed that the proportion of non-financial assets held has also increased due to the recent rise in real estate prices. Excluding this, it was found that the largest number of financial assets were cash and deposits. According to the 2022 comparison of household financial assets in major countries released by the Korea Financial Investment Association on the 25th, financial assets accounted for 35.6% of domestic household assets and non-financial assets including real estate accounted for 64.4%. The proportion of non-financial assets is higher than that of other major developed countries. The proportion of major national financial assets is 61.2% in Australia, 46.2% in the UK, and 28.5% in the United States. The high proportion of non-financial assets such as real estate in domestic households also contributed to the recent rise in the real estate market. It is analyzed that the proportion of non-financial assets held has also increased slightly as real estate prices have steadily risen over the past 4 to 5 years. On the other hand, the proportion of financial assets is lower than that of major countries. In particular, the US and Britain have more than half of their financial assets at 71.5% and 53.8%, respectively. Among financial assets held by domestic households, the proportion of cash and deposits was the highest at 43.4%. Insurance and pensions that followed were 30.4%, down 0.4 percentage points from the previous year. The proportion of financial investment products with the smallest proportion was 25.4%, the same as the previous year. Among them, the share of stocks is 20.8%, a steady increase since 15.2% in 2018. Both bonds and funds fell to 2.3%, compared to the previous year. As a result of examining the proportion of financial assets in major countries, Korea and Japan had a high proportion of cash and deposits, the United States had financial investment products, and the United Kingdom and Australia had a high proportion of insurance and pensions. In general, the composition of assets in major countries has shown a similar trend over the past 2 years from 2020. It is analyzed that the proportion of cash and deposits increased as the savings rate increased due to sluggish consumption from 2020 to the peak of COVID-19. Last year, non-financial assets increased as the value of real estate assets rose due to the boom in the real estate market. Regarding the disappearance of the monetary policy direction decision that it would maintain the interest rate hike for the time being, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chong-yong said on the 25th, "If prices continue to be higher than expected next year, the interest rate hike will continue." The governor of the Bank of Korea responded to the question at a press conference shortly after the regular meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee earlier in the day, confirming whether the possibility of raising the benchmark interest rate has been left open for next year. The governor of the Bank of Korea said, "For the time being, we agreed with the Monetary Policy Committee to raise the rate by 0.25 percentage points, adding, "After that, it is meaningless to talk deeply about what to do next year's interest rate. If prices continue higher than expected next year, the interest rate hike will continue, while if the economy gets much worse, wouldn't there be another trend?" he said. If there are investors who expected not to raise interest rates after the end of the year, they should lose or profit on their own responsibility, and judge by the end of the year. Regarding the neutral rate, which means an appropriate level of interest rate that does not overheat or shrink the economy, the Bank of Korea governor said, when the base rate went to 2.25%, it went to the bottom of the neutral rate, and now it is moderate. Regarding the disappearance of the monetary policy direction decision to maintain the interest rate hike for the time being, he said, the reason why I expressed it for the time being and said vaguely after that is because there is a lot of uncertainty now, so it can be confusing to talk about more than 3 months. The Bank of Korea governor said, the reason why we keep talking about 3 months is that we have to see what the US Federal Reserve will make in September, and leadership will change at the Chinese National Convention in late October and early November, and there are many risks such as structural aspects of how European gas prices will change in winter. In addition, he added, considering all this, no matter how good we are at forward guidance, there are many uncertainties for more than 6 months, so it is desirable to communicate with the market by seeing uncertainties occur every 3 months. Police have arrested a group of overseas Koreans who do not speak Korean as their first language and who cheated on a proxy test systematically in the Korean language proficiency test for foreigners. The Ujeongbu police station in Gyeonggi province said on the 25th that it arrested 7 Chinese people, including A who took the test by proxy, 6 Chinese students, and 14 people, including B, a broker who arranged the test by proxy, without detention. The police are also looking for a proxy test requester who fled to China before requesting to leave the country, and are conducting a follow-up investigation into a broker in China. According to the police, A and others are suspected of systematically taking the 82nd Korean language proficiency test held at Kyungmin University on May 15 under the supervision of the National Institute of International Education under the work of the National Institute of International Education. 6 arrested Chinese students asked for a proxy test on condition that they pay 5,000 yuan to brokers through Chinese job search sites as it became difficult to obtain a Korean language proficiency test required for graduation and degree conditions. The broker, who received the request, was found to have committed the crime by cleverly exploiting the fact that he/she must wear a mask at the test site depending on the COVID-19 situation and that it is difficult for the test supervisor to compare the faces of dozens of applicants with their ID cards. It has been confirmed that the broker decided to receive 400,000 won to 500,000 won in return for obtaining the 4th grade of the Korean proficiency test and recruited candidates for the proxy test. During the investigation, the police conducted a follow-up investigation of proxy test requests and brokers to secure evidence and found their organized and detailed crimes. Their crimes were revealed when the supervisor reported them to 112 in the process of checking the examinees on the day of the test, suspicious of the difference between the test requester and the proxy test takers. Police, who were dispatched after receiving a report, have arrested 7 proxy applicants at the scene and have been investigating. An official from Ujeongbu police station said, there is a concern that the number of cheating tests of this method will increase significantly among Korean language proficiency test takers. We will also suggest improving the system to strengthen the identity of applicants and prevent cheating such as education. The Korean language proficiency test is mainly used as a requirement for foreigners studying at domestic universities and graduate schools to graduate from college or complete a master's doctorate. After U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, the possibility of war between China and Taiwan began to be mentioned in earnest. Chinese military aircraft and warships are poised to neutralize the midline of the Taiwan Strait, an unofficial border between the two sides. The Chinese military fired missiles into waters near Taiwan's commercial port, suggesting that military maneuvers should be carried out anywhere in the Taiwan Strait if necessary. Here, questions related to China's invasion of Taiwan need to be analyzed in 2 parts. It is, can China invade Taiwan and will China invade Taiwan? It looks similar, but the 2 questions are different. If the former is about objective aspects such as the possibility of occupation of Taiwan through military operations, the latter is related to political and strategic decisions by Chinese leaders, including President Xi Jinping. Of course, the 2 questions cannot be completely separate. It is reasonable to believe that Xi will make an invasion decision only when the possibility of military success is high. In terms of objective power, China has 2 million regular troops, Taiwan has only 170,000 regular troops and 1.7 million reservists, making it no match. In addition, China, the world's 2nd largest economy, has increased defense spending by 6 to 10% annually over the past 25 years. China will first take sequential or simultaneous military measures, including missile launches, air strikes, sea blockade, and U.S. aid cuts. Taiwan will not surrender here. Only by landing troops on Taiwan and destroying the Taiwanese army will China be able to declare victory. After all, the key factor in determining the victory or defeat of the cross-strait war is landing operations. Historically, it is not long before China effectively ruled Taiwan. This is because Taiwan is a natural fortress that is difficult to subjugate. Mainland China and Taiwan are at least 126 kilometers and 180 kilometers away from each other across the Taiwan Strait. In order for China to send large-scale troops and equipment to Taiwan, landing operations are inevitable. Landing operations are military operations that are likely to fail even if they have overwhelming air and naval power. It is very difficult for landing forces trying to establish a bridgehead on the coast to break through the numerically dominant and prepared lines of defense. In particular, Taiwan's eastern coast is a sheer cliff, and most of the western coast is bare. There are only 13 to 14 points in the west and north where large-scale landing operations are possible. Weather conditions in the Taiwan Strait are also difficult to land due to strong winds, high waves, rainy seasons, fog, and torrents for most of the period except April and October. Taiwan has built a strong line of defense at the possible landing site for decades. As shown by Operation Normandy in Incheon and World War II during the Korean War in the past, the key to landing operations is a surprise attack that deceives the time and place. However, in the case of the invasion of Taiwan, the location and timing are almost predictable. If China prepares for a large-scale invasion due to the advancement of observation equipment, it will be captured months before the execution. In fact, a surprise attack is impossible. Transporting large forces beyond the Taiwan Strait is one of the challenges. Chun Young-woo, former presidential secretary for Foreign Affairs and Security, said, "To transport hundreds of thousands of troops, private ships are inevitable, and many of them will be rice for U.S. made Harpoon air-to-ship missiles mounted on Taiwan's F-16 fighter jets or Malaysia fighter jets." He also pointed out, even if you manage to avoid missiles and approach Taiwan's coast, you will encounter an attached mine, but the operation to remove it is not only dangerous but also takes a long time. Even if the U.S. officially observes the principle of non-intervention, it is different on the seabed. The U.S. nuclear submarines will boldly attack China's troop carriers or submarines because it is difficult to identify the attackers on the seabed. If hundreds of thousands of people are killed and defeated, even the Chinese Communist Party's ruling system could be shaken, and President Xi Jinping would make such a dangerous decision, Chun said. Lee Song-hoon, a senior researcher at the Institute for National Security Strategy, said, "It will be difficult for China to choose military adventures due to economic damage, Taiwan's willingness to fight against death, and the military gap with the U.S. Thank you for watching today. Please subscribe and like.